Babylon. You've heard the name 100 times, but what do you actually know about it? The tower? The hanging gardens? The real story is far more interesting. And here's why. Babylon is a city wrapped in mystery. On the one hand, its name is familiar to 99 out of 100 people. On the other hand, only 1 out of 100 could tell you anything about Babylon beyond the fact that it was an ancient civilization and the place where the famous tower was built. Over the next few minutes, we're going to clear up that misunderstanding, but we'll do it the smart way. The biggest mistake people make when talking about Babylon is diving straight into dozens of complicated terms, the Bible, references to countless peoples almost no one has ever heard of, and turning a fascinating story into an overly complicated one. Instead, over the next 10 minutes, we'll take a simpler approach. We'll break Babylon's history down into clear, easy-to-follow pieces, while still giving you a solid understanding of what made it so important. We'll also run into Alexander the Great, Hammurabi, Nebuchadnezzar, and plenty of other famous figures you've definitely heard of, even if you couldn't say much about who they actually were. But let's start with something most people get wrong. Babylon wasn't a country. It was a city. At the same time, it often served as the capital of powerful empires. Some it built itself and others it inherited over time. No one knows exactly when Babylon was founded. Most historians agree that the city appeared sometime around the 25th century BC. To put that into perspective, that's roughly the same period when the Great Pyramid of Giza was being built in ancient Egypt. So, were the Babylonians any less ancient than the Egyptians? Absolutely not. The problem is that Babylon sits in an area with a very high water table, making archaeological excavations extremely difficult even today. What's even more fascinating is that the oldest surviving texts already mention what they call the first generations. In other words, peoples who were considered ancient even by those living 4,500 years ago. Some historians believe those early civilizations may have lived on the very site where Babylon would later rise. We do know for certain that this region was once home to the Sumerian civilization, a culture so old that to the ancient Romans, the Sumerians were as distant in time as the Romans are to us today. Pretty wild, isn't it? Babylon stood about 50 miles south of modern-day Baghdad, in what is now Iraq. For the ancient world, its location was almost perfect. The Persian Gulf lay nearby. So did the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. There was plenty of fertile land for farming and irrigation. If that sounds familiar, it should, just like in ancient Egypt. Rivers meant life. For its first few centuries, though, Babylon was nothing more than a provincial town within the Sumerian Akkadian Kingdom, which stretched across parts of modern-day Iraq, Syria, Iran, and beyond. The city's only real importance came from the royal governor stationed there to collect taxes. But toward the end of the 2nd millennium BC, that kingdom collapsed. As usually happens, dozens of smaller states emerged and almost immediately started fighting one another. It was during those wars around the 19th century BC that Babylon finally rose to prominence. The Amorites, led by Sumu-Abum, captured the city, founded a new royal dynasty, and launched what historians now call the Old Babylonian Kingdom. Over the next few centuries, Babylon expanded dramatically, eventually controlling territory from the Persian Gulf in the south, all the way to Nineveh in the north. And then there was Hammurabi. You've definitely heard his name, but chances are you don't realize just how influential he really was. Hammurabi was the 6th king of this dynasty. He united most of Mesopotamia under Babylonian rule and, perhaps even more importantly, introduced one of history's first comprehensive legal codes. Think about that for a second. We're talking about the 18th century BC, and Babylon already had a formal system of laws. That doesn't mean those laws were exactly merciful. If a builder constructed a house that later collapsed, he could be executed. A surgeon, whose operation went terribly wrong, risked having his hands cut off. And anyone caught hiding, escaped slaves could end up on the gallows. These laws were carved into large stone monuments and displayed throughout the kingdom, suggesting that at least a significant portion of the population could actually read them. Babylon's achievements in astronomy point in the same direction. Well, to be more accurate, astrology. Babylonian priests carefully observed the night sky, especially the planet Venus, believing the movements of the heavens could reveal the future. Only priests were allowed to study the stars. Even so, the fact that people were systematically observing planets and recording celestial events 4,000 years ago is remarkable. The same goes for their impressive temples, monumental architecture, and magnificent royal palaces. Babylonian scholars were also surprisingly advanced in mathematics and geometry. Although historians believe they borrowed many of these ideas from their Sumerian predecessors, whose original works have mostly been lost to history. But no empire stays at its peak forever. Growing tensions between the king, the nobility, free citizens, and slaves gradually weakened Babylon from within. That made the kingdom an easy target. First came raids from mountain tribes. Then the Hittites, whose homeland lay in what is now Turkey, invaded. Eventually power passed to another mountain people, the Kassites. To their credit, they respected Babylonian culture. They restored temples, preserved traditions, and kept the city's cultural life alive. Politics, however, was another story. Poor leadership led to agricultural decline, economic crises, and increasing dependence on Egypt. By the year 1155 BC, Babylon had grown weak once again. This time it fell to the Elamites, a civilization from what is now Iran. From that point on, the city slowly lost its influence. For a while, it wasn't even the capital of its own kingdom anymore. There were repeated attempts to restore Babylon's former glory, but each one ended in disappointment. By 729 BC, Babylon had become part of the Neo-Assyrian Empire. Even so, its culture, science, and education continued to thrive. The Assyrian kings considered Babylon too important to destroy completely, so they allowed it to remain a separate kingdom under their control. That decision would eventually come back to haunt them. The kings of Babylon never gave up on the idea of restoring their independence. Their chance finally came in 626 BC, when Nabopolassar became king and began rebuilding Babylon's power. His work was later completed by the man almost everyone has heard of, Nebuchadnezzar II. By the 6th century BC, Babylon had reclaimed nearly all of its historic lands and added many new ones. At its height, Babylon was home to around 200,000 people. The city was protected by enormous walls and a wide defensive moat. According to tradition, it was during Nebuchadnezzar's reign that the legendary Hanging Gardens of Babylon were built, one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. Whether they actually existed is still debated. Some historians believe the gardens were nothing more than a legend. The Tower of Babel was real. It was a massive 7-story ziggurat known as Etemenanki. It served as a temple where priests worshipped the gods, and in the ancient world it was considered one of the greatest architectural achievements of its time. Nebuchadnezzar's reign also explains why Babylon is portrayed so negatively in the Bible. As we mentioned earlier, Babylon had freed itself from Assyrian rule and pursued an aggressive foreign policy. In 586 BC, Nebuchadnezzar captured and destroyed Jerusalem. Many Jews were deported to Babylon, while others faced harsh reprisals. Many historians believe the Babylonian captivity played a major role in shaping the identity of the Jewish people. It also inspired biblical prophecies predicting Babylon's destruction, floods, and divine punishment. The best known of these stories is, of course, the tale of the Tower of Babel, where humanity's single language was supposedly divided into many, bringing Babylon's greatness to an end. That said, the Hebrew scriptures don't speak only negatively about Babylon. They also contain passages that describe the city with admiration. In the end, however, the prophecy of Babylon's fall did come true. In 539 BC, the city was conquered by the Persian Empire. Much of Babylon was damaged, but not completely destroyed. The Persian king Cyrus the Great treated the Babylonians with respect and largely left their way of life untouched. It was during this period that Herodotus visited Babylon, describing it as one of the largest and most beautiful cities in the world, even though many of its greatest buildings had already been damaged. Only in 479 BC, after yet another Babylonian uprising, did King Xerxes finally strip the city of its independence. But Babylon's story wasn't over yet. Because if there's one name that eventually appears in almost every story about the ancient world, it's Alexander the Great. His conquests swept across the known world, and Babylon was no exception. Much like he did in Egypt, Alexander ordered Babylon's temples to be restored. He also began rebuilding the legendary Tower of Babel. Before long, he even declared Babylon the capital of his empire. Unfortunately, in 323 BC, Alexander died unexpectedly. With him died most of the plans to restore Babylon to its former glory. From that point on, the city would never again become the dominant power it once was. For some time, however, Babylon remained an important Hellenistic city. New temples were built, Greek theaters appeared, even the gods began to merge. The Mesopotamian god Nergal became associated with Heracles, while Marduk was identified with Zeus. Life in Babylon continued. The ruins of the old ziggurat were even used to build a theater nearby. Not far away, another city was founded, and many Babylonians gradually moved there. In the end, though, the endless wars of the Middle East finished what centuries of decline had already begun. The Parthians, Persians, Syrians, and from time to time even the Romans all fought for control of the region. Babylon changed hands again and again. Its location, once its greatest advantage, became a curse. Constant warfare slowly destroyed the city and gave people fewer and fewer reasons to stay. To this date, historians can't agree on exactly when Babylon was finally abandoned. Some believe the city effectively died when much of its population moved to the newly built Seleucia. Others point to medieval accounts suggesting that Babylon was still standing as late as the 12th century AD. Part of the confusion comes from the fact that several other cities throughout history were also called Babylon, including settlements in Egypt and even parts of Europe. The original Babylon, however, gradually gave way to the new city that had grown beside it. When the Romans eventually arrived, they described the city as enormous, even in decline. Then came a devastating plague that weakened both the empire and the region itself. Later, the Persians established a new capital farther north, a city known as Ctesiphon, which would become one of the major capitals of the Parthian Empire. After that came the Arab conquests, bringing yet another wave of change to the Middle East. In many ways, the region has remained unstable ever since. So the real reason Babylon disappeared wasn't a single invasion or one catastrophic event. It was centuries of gradual decline, combined with constant warfare. Ironically, those same conflicts have also made Babylon difficult to study. The area has seen wars for generations, making large-scale archaeological excavations extremely challenging. Even during the First World War, British and Ottoman forces fought near the ruins of ancient Babylon. In the end, it was humanity's own history of conflict that slowly erased one of the greatest cities of the ancient world. And that's where Babylon's story comes to an end. So does ours. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave a like. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.